Introduce our speaker today, who will speak until 10:10 and will then answer any questions from the audience. Let's all welcome Keith R. from Newport.
Hello everybody, my name is Keith, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi.
And my sobriety date is January 26, 1998. First of all, I want to thank Roxanne for asking me to come and do this today, and then I guess I got to thank my sponsor for telling me never to say no to AA. What I like about AA is I learn something every day. Every time I go to an AA meeting, I learn something, and today I learned something from my friend Dave over there, who clued me into the fact that I was an AOD. Alcohol and other drugs. So you're going to hear a little bit of everything in the story today. But so I grew up in New Zealand, and there's a lot of drinking going on down there. And I remember when I was like 13 years old, around that time period, my next door neighbor and I, we stole some of our parents' alcohol, and I remember it was warm beer. And I remember when I drank it, and I kind of got a stomach ache. And I thought to myself, this doesn't feel that good. And then all of a sudden it felt good up here. And I've liked that feeling ever since. And I think what I've learned is between that time and the time I got sober, I did a lot of geographicals, and I tried to duplicate that feeling. And it was pretty easy to duplicate, a bottle of beer. But what I got into later on, that I really, really liked, it was really, really hard to duplicate that over and over and over again because it just didn't work as good. And so anyway, I left New Zealand when I was like 18 years old, and I had a really interesting, probably like the first 15 years till I was like 30. I was a professional sailor, and I kind of like sailed around the South Pacific and around the United States, and did a lot of cruising and on big sailboats, and then I got into a lot of sailboat racing, and associated that was a lot of yacht clubs with a lot of bars and a lot of drinking, and I did that, and I lived in Hawaii for like 4 years, from like 18 to 22, and it's like every place I lived, I kind of got into a certain drug, and then I'd get sick of that drug, or I'd get run out of that place, and I'd move to another place, and then I'd always swear off that drug. I was never going to do that again. And I would get into, and I was never going to do drugs now. Never alcohol. I never talked about never doing alcohol, but I was never going to do drugs again. And I'd always find a group that had the new drug that I was going to get into, and I got into then I moved to the Bay Area, and I got into another drug, and then I moved down here in 1988, and I got into another drug. And I always thought it was the drugs were the problem. I never thought I never really thought I had a problem because I could always stop doing, but the consistent was always alcohol, and I didn't realize that until I actually got into treatment in 1998, and so I kept on doing all these geographicals, and my life was okay. I had a couple of DUIs, and actually hit and run DUIs on the same night. I don't remember the first one, but I remember the second one pretty well. And it was the only time I'd ever been in jail. And what happened is I never really had any consequences because I was working for people that knew people, and I always got off. I remember I got this DUI, and I went to jail after taking out a couple of cars, and put two people in hospital, and I swore off alcohol, and I actually wasn't drinking. And a friend of mine called me up, and he said, you need to come and do this. You come and do this regatta with us. And I said, no, I got to stay away from you guys. You guys are the problem. I just got to stay clean and get through this court thing. And he said, no, you need to do it because the guy who owns the boat's a Superior Court judge in San Francisco, and I think he can help you out. And like the second day in the regatta, he took me aside, and his name is Judge out of San Francisco. He's not a judge anymore. He got kicked out. And he told me that he said, I hear you have a problem over in Richmond Court, and he said, if there's anything I can do to help you out, let me know. And I kind of went, oh, everything's going good. I don't think I need any help. And I got off the phone and off the boat, and I went to the payphone at the yacht club, and I called my attorney, and I said, David, this is what's going on. He said, you need to get that guy to call this judge. Here's his name. And that's what he did. And when I went to court, I pled no contest. And when I went for my arraignment, well, before that, I went to I had to go and get evaluated by some guy in the court. And I walked into this room, and this guy looked at the file, and he was chain smoking, and I was judging him because he was chain smoking, and he told me that I was an alcoholic. And I said, you don't even know. I thought to myself, you don't even know me. How can you tell I'm an alcoholic? And it was basically all there in black and white from the night of a month or so before. But anyway, when I went to court to get my sentencing, the judge actually, when my name was called, he made the comment, "Oh, you're the sailor," and I got off really, really, really lightly. I didn't have to do any time. I thought I was going to go to jail, and so it's, all through my life I've had no consequence, and I've kind of got through by the skin of my teeth. And so basically what happened is I moved down to Orange County in 1988 from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I had a problem with kidney stones. And so a lot of things happened for me over at Hoag Hospital in Newport Beach. So I got kidney stones. I got raced in there about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the doctor who was at the ER, he knew exactly what was going on with me, and he put an IV in my arm, and he shot me with Demerol. And it was the most amazing feeling I'd ever had in my life, and I wanted to live like that forever. And so then, I got out of the hospital, and they sent me to a urologist, and the urologist was kind of a friendly urologist to me. He said there's a couple of ways we can do this, and one of the ways would be just kind of monitor it, take care of you with pain medication. And so I decided to get on the pain medication, and I got addicted very, very quickly. And what ended up happening is I just needed more, more and more and more. And I ended up for the next 8 years drinking and taking lots and lots of Vicodin every single day. And it got to a point, and during this time I got married. I had a couple of kids. I was in such denial about this whole thing because I was in sales. I've been a real estate broker for 30 years, and I was in sales, obviously, and my sales every year were just going up and up and up, and I'm eating more and more of this Vicodin. It was giving me all this confidence, and I always thought I didn't have a problem because I could kind of stop it, kind of like around about 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and then around about 8 o'clock at night when the kids were going to bed, I was starting to detox. So I'd have to knock back a few scotches just to kind of take the edge off so then I could go to sleep. And then the next day it would start over and over again. And I used to call it Groundhog Day. It was like the most amazing thing. It was like the same thing every single day. I was like, I've heard on this program, taking a trip, not taking a trip. I didn't take trips because I couldn't get, especially out of the country. It was really, really tough to go. When I'd go back to New Zealand, you couldn't get any of this stuff down there, and it was just brutal. It was like a really, really tough time in my life. And so, I basically went through this thing, and this whole thing, the whole time I'm like closing down. I'm not, the friends I have, I don't have anymore. I'm working 7 days a week. I got these 2 little kids running around. I'm in a relationship that I really don't want to be in. And I finally woke up one morning around 2 o'clock in the morning. It was exactly the way. This is the way I got my sobriety date. I woke up the week before, so I went into Hoag Hospital. It was Super Bowl Sunday, 1998, and I'd woken up the Monday before around about 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was obviously winter time, and I woke up and I was freezing cold, and I went into the guest room, I put on some sweats, and I got back into the guest bedroom bed. And about an hour later, I woke up and I was completely drenched. And I lay there and I thought, shit, I just can't do this anymore. And so I went downstairs and I called Betty Ford. And because that's the only, I didn't know anything about AA. I'd never been exposed to AA. When I had the DUIs, the judge should have sentenced me to AA, so I would have got exposed a lot earlier, but I never got exposed. And so anyway, I went downstairs. I called Betty Ford about probably like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got this guy on the phone, and that was the first time I'd actually admitted to somebody else that I potentially may have a problem, and I'm pretty frugal and cheap, and I wanted to know how long it would take, when could I do it, and more important, how much was it going to cost? That's all. And he was like a night nurse, and he really couldn't tell me too much, so he kind of told me to call back the next morning, and I went back, and I remember that night I went back to bed, and I slept right through the time my body would normally wake me up around about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I woke up, it was like 7:38, my wife had, my ex-wife had taken she's my wife then, but now my ex-wife, but she'd taken my kids to school, and I slept right through, and I remembered what I'd done, and I remember I felt really, really good that I'd actually made that call. And then I remembered I knew somebody that worked over at Hoag Hospital. And so I called over to Hoag, and they told me to come by and come in and do like an evaluation. And so I walk into Hoag Hospital, and I've got a pocket full of pills. I'm about 45 pounds heavier than what I am today. I'm like gray yellow, and I'm sweating like a pig. And I met with the nurse over there, and I met with this guy called Dr. Hedrick. And Dr. Hedrick suggested that I call my wife and have her bring a bag, and that I should just stay. And I remember my head said, well, that's not going to work because I got this bag of AOD at home. And I got to do that before I come in here. And I was kind of like ready. I was like, I kind of like, that morning I woke up, I was like ready to do something about it, but I really didn't know what I was really going to have to do. And I thought I said, well, let me, I got a lot of stuff I got to do this week, and let me go and talk about this with my wife, and I'll call you later today. And I went home and I counted every single pill I had. And I had enough to get me till 9:30 on January 25th, which was Super Bowl Sunday. And I didn't even know what that day was. All I knew was that I wasn't going into Hoag Hospital until 9:30 on January. And I called up and they said, yeah, they'd have a bed for me. And that's what I did. And that week was like very liberating to me because my disease was very, very lonely. And other than, I'd go out some nights and we'd drink. But my daily thing was like it was like all the other drugs I did was social. And this was like a very, I'm not sharing any of your shit with anybody else. It's all mine. I worked really hard to get this, and this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it all. It's all mine, and it was all hidden. And I was really, I never lost anything anywhere except for a couple of times, and I was really organized about, and I remember coming back and then I called my wife and told her what was going on. She didn't have a clue. So this is 1998, so there was no Google, so she couldn't figure out what was going on in my life, why I was Dr. Jekyll and Dr. Hyde. She didn't know. She just knew there was something wrong with me, but she couldn't figure it out. And at this time, I had a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they kind of didn't want to have anything to do with me. It was like I remember trying to get them to go to bed at night, and they would scream for their mother. There was never any like physical abuse, but there was a lot of verbal abuse. And then, so that week I basically told her what was going on, and she said, well, why aren't you going in tomorrow? And I said, well, because I've got this, and I got to eat it. and I didn't know you meant to flush them down the toilet. That's what I tell everybody today, flush them. But anyway, it was an amazing week. I just, the stuff was out. I was eating it as I needed it, and the cat was out of the bag, and I was going into detox. And that's all I thought I was going to do. I was going to go into detox, and I was going to get down to, I was going to be able to come back and do 1 to 2 pills every 2 to 4 hours. That's what I really wanted. because I didn't know anything about AA. I didn't know that Hogue had this program that was associated with AA, and they were going to get the hook in you and make you stay. And I didn't know any of that. But so I that was my goal. And so I checked. I walked into the hospital. So anyway, I tell everybody I'm going to New Zealand to visit my sick dad. And the flights to New Zealand usually go around about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. The taxi came and got me at 9:15 in the morning. And I remember waving goodbye to my kids. And I remember one of the things Doctor said to me is, he said, you know, your 6-year-old will probably remember some of the crazy crap that went on in your house, but your 4-year-old will not remember anything. And I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But so anyway, I go into this hospital, and the first thing they said to me is, they checked me in and they said, oh, it's family day. Go out on the patio and meet all these families. And I went, there's no way I'm going to meet these people. So I went into my room, and I came out around about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was this group of people in there. There was 22 of us or 21 of us in the hospital, and they were all in different phases of detox and rehab. And I walked into this room, and they were getting ready to watch Super Bowl, and it was in San Diego. It was Green Bay against Denver. And I walked into this room, and I sat down, and I watched the Super Bowl with these guys, and it was like the most amazing experience I've ever had. It was like I was in this room with a whole bunch of people that were just like me, and I hadn't been in that situation before. And I bonded with these people. It was amazing. It was like the first week over there. It was like I got to know all these people, all these stories, and it was pretty evenly divided. It was because I was strictly I didn't think I was a drug addict. I just thought I had a problem with pills. But there was definitely 50% was alcohol, and the rest was like drugs, some type of drug. And I related to all of these people, and that was an amazing experience. And then the way it worked over there at the time was, on a Friday afternoon, everybody that was coining out or done their program, would finish their program, they would leave, and then we'd have a meeting that afternoon, and we'd get all these chores assigned. And it was like, I'd met all these great people, and all of a sudden on Friday afternoon, about half of them were leaving. And it was the most depressing time, like for about 3 or 4 hours. Then all of a sudden, all these new people started coming. And that's what I've experienced. People are always coming, in AA. And so I ended up staying. I did 21 days in Hogue. I got to know some really amazing people over there, and then it was time for me to exit, and they made me fill out this exit form, and I was meant to fill in all these places and meetings I was going to go to, and I just kind of lied my way through it because I didn't think I was an alcoholic, and I didn't think I needed to go to AA meetings, and I was feeling really, really good, and I was going to go back to work, and I left, and the Monday, so I left on a Thursday, and they told me to go to this meeting on Monday, and I was going to go to this 7 o'clock meeting at the Alana Club in Costa Mesa, and I remember driving into the parking lot about 7:10, because there's no way I was going to be early, and I drove in and I saw two cars in the parking lot of people that I knew, and I turned around, I never went back. And I lucked out. I got a really good sponsor who kind of never told me what to do. He just kind of made suggestions to me. He was in the same kind of type of business that I was, and a couple of things he told me from the beginning, and I've pretty much done this ever since. He said, I want you to figure out the meetings you're going to go to each week. And he said, I want you to put them into your Palm Pilot, and no matter what, the only reason you get to not go to that meeting is if it's a family emergency or if you're writing a contract. And I've pretty much done that ever since. I go to like 4 or 5 meetings every week, and I've always done that. There's a couple of meetings that I've been going to the whole time I've been sober. And I pretty much, I have about 7 or 8 meetings that I go to, and so if I miss one for one reason, I'll pick it up on one of the list of meetings that I have, and that's kind of what I've done, and I've stayed pretty current. I've had 2 sponsors. One thing with my first sponsor is there was I lied to him for 4.5 years when I did my 5th step with him. I could never tell him this one dirty little secret that I carried around with me for a long, long time. And, it took me like 4.5 years to actually unload it. And what happened during that 4.5 years is I kind of knew, knowing what the steps were about, and I knew that I had to unload this stuff or else I was never going to get rid of it. And it was the thing that I would think about every single day, this one thing, and it just drove me nuts in the end. Not that I wanted to drink. I'm one of the lucky ones. I got sober and I've never drank since, and I've never taken a drug since. But it's like that thing just haunted me, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I'd go back to sleep, and I'd lie there and I'd think about this one thing. And so it took me 4.5 years to actually tell him the truth. And then it took me 11 years to make the amends. And the only way I made the amends, it was down in Australia with a family member. And I'd gone down there a couple of times, and I was going to make the amends, but I never did. I always chickened out. And so he told me, he said, well, what you're going to do for the next 30 days is every meeting you go to, you're going to tell everybody in the meeting you're going to go to Australia in 30 days, you're going to make this amends to this person. And he said, and when you come back, they're going to ask you, did you make the amends? And that's exactly what I did. And about an hour before I went to the airport, I made this amends to this person 11 years later. And that's kind of what I've done. It's like I've been consistent. I continue to go to meetings. I try to help people. I've taken, I think in most cases, I've taken direction from my sponsor. I'll tell you a story. So when I got sober, about a year sober, I meet this girl in AA, and I'm going to run away with this girl. Okay, and there's this chemistry, but nothing's happening, and I'm down on the beach, and my sponsor's a big surfer, or he was a big surfer, and he used to go to by 45th Street. He used to park his car, and there's a sober living by the sea house there, and the guys would let him use a shower. And so I think we're doing like the 5th or 6th step down on the beach, and we're down there. We meet down there one day, and it's like, I'll never forget it. The tide was low, and all the jetties were showing, and I'm sitting on the beach. And I'm telling my sponsor that I'm going to leave my wife and my kids, and I'm going to run away with this gal in AA. And so he's listening to the story, and he says, well, okay, let me ask you something. He says, he knew my wife, and he says, well, how long have you and Robin been married? And I said, well, about 8. He said, how long have you guys been married? I said, well, about 8 years. And he said, and how many years were you clean? And I said, well, none. And he said, well, why don't you give her 8 years of clean time? And I said, no effing way. And then I went away and I thought about it, and nothing really happened. It's like I kind of took his direction. And so about 8 years later, I run into this gal, and just by chance, I was like, I was meant to go this way, and I decided I was going to go this way this one day, and I'm driving down the street, and I see her, and we stop and we talk, and so today I'm married to that gal. And the thing is, the whole time this was going on, I didn't even know if she knows this. But the whole time this is going on, it's all in my head what I'm going to do. She doesn't know anything about it. She didn't know anything about this. And I think what I'm trying to say here is, like, if I had have not taken my sponsor's direction that day, and I had have left my wife and my kids and gone and tried to have a relationship with this woman who was, I was probably a year and a half sober, and she was half a year sober. It wouldn't have worked out, bottom line. There's no way it would have worked out, because I was like brand new, she was brand new, And I'm just glad I followed some direction because, you know, today we're married and we actually have an okay relationship, I think, right? And, but, you know, so I think the moral of the story is, you know, take some direction, you know, Sherman. Because I've been involved, and I've never taken like my wife and I were coming up here, and she said something about, you know, she and I both we don't go to the meetings together, and she goes to her meetings, I go to my meetings, and she made a comment on coming up here, you know, I'm kind of sick of the meetings I'm going to, and I said, well, you know, go to different meetings, and that's what my sponsor told me, because I call them the AA fuckets, and every so often I get a point where I get sick of all the people that are in the rooms. I'm sick of the same stories, sick of the same crap every week. And whenever I've felt like that, I've always just gone to different meetings. And I think the problem is if I had to stop going to meetings, I probably wouldn't have the time I have today. And, you know, it's like I'm involved. I've got a couple of different businesses right now. One of the businesses I'm involved in, I deal with a lot of people new in sobriety. And it's like these people that are coming today are so young and their brains are so fried from all the stuff they're doing. And then I see people that continually relapse that just lose everything. And it's like, I remember going to a speaker meeting at Hogue one night, and this guy had you get 30 seconds to say your gratitude thank you for your birthday. And this guy got up there and they let him talk for 2 or 3 minutes. And he read off this list, and he basically just said, listen, this is what alcohol takes. And he just read all this stuff, you know, and it was basically everything. You know, it takes everything away. And I like the fact that I didn't lose that stuff. I think I had a pretty high bottom. But I see these people coming in that are my age that are just, you know, so messed up and multiple relapses, and the families are blowing up. And, you know, I'm just glad that today I have a really good relationship with my children. You know, my kids are 26 and 25. And I have a really good relationship with them. Like my son called me the other day and asked me how to grill lamb chops. And, you know, we take trips together, and, you know, I'm grateful for that. And, you know, the other thing I'm really proud of is I've got 5 more months of alimony. I always think when my kids got out of college, it was like I got a pay raise, and it's like in September of 30th of this year, I'm going to get another pay raise, and I'll never have to pay that money again. I'm grateful for that. And that's it. So thanks for letting me share. My time is up. Thank you.